been just asking God to just use me to speak to your hearts, and hopefully you can just take pieces that reach you during our time together. And so I am kind of just going to be sharing like my story and how God has taken me through seasons of anxiety and brought me out of them. And vulnerability is like, what I've learned is such a gift to all of us, and when we can like take that step to be vulnerable with each other, there's so much power in sharing and reminding us that we're not alone in those really dark seasons. And it connects us. It connects us as mothers. Like when we like say, I was up all night, like with my screaming baby, nothing worked, you know, and then the mom next to you is like, me too, like let's have coffee or cry, like I don't know, you know, like it's so hard, you know. And so so I hope that you're encouraged in that as I share. Okay, so I struggle with infertility. I have PCOS. It's one of the leading causes of infertility, and my husband and I tried on a couple years on our own to conceive, but ended up doing IVF, and we were at our clinic for about a year before I got pregnant, but we had decided to put back 2 embryos, and our doctor said, you have a 5% chance that one of those embryos will split, let alone them both taking. And we're like, there's no way that's going to happen. There's no way. Surprise, surprise, we hit that 5% chance just like right on the dot. And I remember our doctor, the first thing she said is like, congratulations, you're having twins. And my husband and I are actually both twins. So I was like, we can do twins. Like twins is doable. And then she like paused, her face changed, it was silent, and she's like, there's a 3rd heartbeat, and it was just dead silent. And I'm like, okay, like 3, like just 3 babies, like trying to wrap my head around, how are we gonna do this? We lived in a teeny tiny beach condo, like how are we gonna do this? Like how are we gonna do this? And my husband and I ended up moving in with my parents, and I was on bed rest for 2 months. I had a great pregnancy despite carrying 3 babies. I had a really good pregnancy, and they were all very healthy 5-pound babies, which is remarkable for triplets. And they were only in the NICU for 2 weeks, and I was just so happy that I was finally a mom. And a mom to 3, like 3 babies. What a gift! 3 babies at one time, you know, like it just was like, oh, like in my pregnancy, it just felt like so exciting, you know, like this is so special, so exciting. And then they were all here, and they were in the NICU for 2 weeks, and growing. They just had to work on growing and feeding, and that in itself is emotional, having your baby in the NICU and leaving the hospital without them. There's so many heartstrings that are pulled, and it's hard. But we brought them home, and boy, was I in for it. It was just, I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect what I experienced, and I did not expect just how difficult it was going to be. And I think partially, like maybe going through infertility, I had this idea in my head that it was just going to be like magical. Like it's gonna be so amazing. I'm gonna have these 3 babies. It's just gonna be so great. And it was not so great. And when I was pregnant, I had a good friend who had said to me, she has twins, and she said to me, just so you know, like if you're having a hard time, like I want you to know I'm here for you. Like if you ever go through a season where it's like just really, really dark and you get depressed, like I'm here for you. Like I've been there and I understand it. And I was so naive. I was like, how could you ever feel depressed? Like having a baby, this is like the greatest. I don't know what you're talking about, but that's not gonna happen to me. Like was so naive. And but her words like stuck with me. Like they stuck with me, and I'll never forget our conversation because one, like I was just like, there's no way that'll happen, you know? And but clearly God was also using her in that moment because he knew I was gonna need her as time went on, you know? And the triplets all had GERD. If you're not familiar with GERD, it's like severe reflux. It's a freaking nightmare. And they, it's literally the worst. And they were in a lot of like arching, like they're just in a lot of pain, spitting up a lot. I was breastfeeding. That was, talk about like, that's like a topic in itself. Like where, you know, like we were living with my parents, which was amazing, but also really stressful when you're like on your own for like 6 years, and then you like move back in with your mom and dad and try and, you know, you're in this small space. I mean, there are things that I like look back and I'm like, I'm so thankful for that we were able to do that, but gosh, it was so hard adjusting to that, you know, all over again. And as the triplets were, you know, they were in their newborn stage and they were not sleeping. They weren't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. Ryan wasn't sleeping. We're fighting over who's sleeping the most. Like, really, why? Like, why do we do this? Like, why do we fight with our spouse over who is sleeping? Nobody is sleeping, okay? Nobody's sleeping. I could feel like the exhaustion was taking such a toll on me. I mean, it's torture. Like, being so sleep deprived is torture. And you can't function. You can't think. I mean, I would be in conversations with people, and I remember feeling like I can't even stay awake. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just want to go lay down, you know. And I know that I had just such unrealistic expectations of what I wanted that season to be, and it couldn't have been further than what I expected. And I could feel myself getting lost and didn't know how to come out of that. I felt ashamed. I was embarrassed. Like, I waited to be this mom, and here I am, and I don't even like it. Like, I'm just not, I felt like I was crumbling, and I felt like a failure. I was angry. Things that you don't want to feel, but you're feeling, and you don't know what to do with, and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say anything because I'm a mom now. I shouldn't feel these things, but I was feeling them to my core. And my family, my mom, my dad, my sisters, my husband, like, they could see this thing happening to me. But like, I could feel this thing happening to me, but I didn't want to admit it because that felt like a big step, right? Like saying, I'm not doing okay, because saying that feels like things are unraveling over here and I can't handle being a mom, and that feels like a hard thing to do. And so I just kept trying and trying and trying, but then I just hit rock bottom and I couldn't do it. And it was just, I needed help, I needed support, I needed things to change. And when the triplets were about 3 months old, I remember sitting down with my family, and they're like, you need more support. Like, we need to help you. And it was like it was a really hard conversation when, like, the people you love come to you and say, like, you're not okay, and you know you're not okay, but you just can't say it, you know. But I finally mustered up like enough like strength to like actually do something about it. And at 3 months postpartum, which on top of that, you're also in the midst of body changes and hormones and all, like, there's so much, you know, there's so much for us when we become moms. And I finally got enough courage to go see my doctor. And I remember that day she diagnosed me with postpartum depression and anxiety. And it was so hard to hear those words, because I'd never been depressed. Like, I'd never felt depressed. I'd never been depressed. Like, I'm a joyful, happy, like, that's not me, you know, but I was depressed. I was just lonely and isolated and exhausted and not thriving in that season. And I knew that in order for things to change in our home, I had to be proactive about getting help, asking for help, saying yes to help, to anyone who wanted to help, because it's really hard for us to do that, right? As moms, it's hard to say, like, hey, actually, can you like watch my kid for like 30 minutes? I need to take a shower. Like the little things are so hard for us to do sometimes. And during that season, I you know, as I said, I went on medication. My sister, she was part of Amazing Church, who I didn't even know these girls. I didn't even know them, but they came to my house throughout the week and helped us during the night. Stayed the night at our house. We'd leave the door open. They would come in the house at night. My husband and I would take turns with them feeding the babies, and we like could get in a couple hours of sleep. It was the most selfless thing that these women did for us. Like, they didn't know us, but they were willing to sacrifice like a night of sleep for us so we could sleep. I mean, I just was like in complete awe to see these amazing now friends be willing to just do that for me, someone they didn't know. And it also felt like in some way there was some kind of validation in that, because I felt like things were so hard, and to have someone else tell me, like, Des, this is hard. This is not easy. Like, motherhood is not easy, you know? And that created vulnerable conversations for me to have with these women that I didn't really know, but was able to say, like, you know, this is the third time he's been up, like, screaming, I don't know what to do, or they would just take him, it's okay, I got it, you know, because sometimes that other person, like, you need that other person, you know, and so that was amazing, and that entire first year of the triplets, first year was hard. It was hard, and even though I was seeking help, seeking Jesus, getting support from my sister and her church friends, and being vocal about my needs, like things that I needed, it was still so hard, you know, because even sometimes it's like, even self-care is so important, something I've really learned on my like own journey with like anxiety and depression, but it's hard to actually do it sometimes, and you have to be intentional about it, and I found it really hard to do that for myself, and sometimes I like look back on that first year and I feel, even to this day, like just, I feel like I missed out. Like I missed out on little moments with my kids because I was in this fog, and you know, that I had a really hard time like stepping out of. But those seasons are where God meets us, and He transforms us and changes us, and you know, and even though that was such a hard season, I knew God was preparing me like for years to come. Whereas now, 6 years later, I can see how that has impacted me and how it has helped me cope and manage with anxiety and be able to overcome some really hard experiences. And after my kids were about a year old, I was able to like tailor off my anxiety meds. I was doing a lot better, but I still struggled a lot with anxiety, and I struggled going anywhere with my kids, like anywhere. Like it was so overwhelming, going grocery shopping, going to the beach, going to the park, you name it. It was like stressful. I was afraid of, I had a lot of fears about someone kidnapping my kids. And so I mean, there are things, obviously, this can happen, but the chances are like so small, but you have this idea in your head that it's like gonna happen, and then that's the thing with anxiety, is that you create these stories in your head, and then all of a sudden you're in this rabbit hole of like all the horrible things that are gonna happen, and it's the hardest thing climbing out. And at the time I was in MOPS, and there was a Easter egg hunt. If you've been with MOPS before, you know they have like an Easter egg hunt every year, and it's at this park, and the park is not gated, and I only went to gated parks. That was it. I can't go to anywhere not gated, because if my kids run, they're going in all different directions, and I can't, that's an anxiety booster right there. I cannot do that. And so they were having this Easter egg hunt. I knew my kids would love it, but I was like, I can't go. I cannot go to this. Like, that would be horrible. That would be a horrible experience. And so the first one, the Easter egg hunt came around, and I lied. I was like, I can't go. We're busy. Sorry. And it rained. It downpoured rained. And so they were like, don't worry, we're going to postpone. I'm like, great, awesome. And so I was just like, now, what do I do now? Like, I told them, I don't know what I said, but I was like, I can't go. And I was like, I can't not go this next time. Like, they rescheduled. Like, what do I do? Do I say something? I don't want to say something. They're going to think I'm crazy. Like, they're going to think I'm crazy. So I like sat down with Carrie, and I was like, so, like, I'm afraid someone's gonna kidnap my kids, so I don't want to go to the Easter egg hunt, but I know my kids would love the Easter egg hunt. Like, what do I do? And like, Carrie has so much love and grace and care for her people, and she was just like, don't worry. Like, it was instant. Don't worry, I'm gonna find a parent for each kid. You'll be good to go. So literally, there was like a mom for each one of my, I didn't even have a kid. There was a mom for each of my kids, and they had the most amazing experience. And that day, like, was such a powerful day for me, because it showed me just the power of vulnerability and saying something that you feel like is saying out loud to someone. Like, I would talk to my husband about it. No, I can't go that. Like, someone's gonna have, like, this could happen. But saying to someone else, like, who's my friend, but also, what is she gonna think of me? Like, is she gonna think I'm crazy? Is she gonna think like that I'm ridiculous because I actually think this could happen? Like, no, she just was like, girl, it's fine. We're gonna get this taken care of. Like, there's so much power in just saying something, like, because you know what, like, when I have been able to say this, I can only go to gated parks. I can only do that. Do you know there's someone else out there who only goes to gated parks too? You're not the only one. Like, why are all parks not gated? They should all just be gated. That would make things way easier, you know, and way less stressful, you know. And I learned, like, just as my babies grew, like, the things that I could handle and not handle. You know, going to the beach by myself, bad idea. Still a bad idea. I've gotten a lot better at it, but still a bad idea. You know, and I learned to kind of just own what I could do, what I could handle, and be okay with saying, hey, you know, I'm not really comfortable going to the beach. Do you think that we could go do this instead? Because I guarantee you that someone else is hoping for that too. You know, someone else is wanting that too. And someone else is wanting to say it too, but they sometimes need that other person to just say it so that way you can just rally together, you know? So, needless to say, those first couple years were trying and hard. And like I said, like seasons, like where it was like low at some points and got better. But little did I know, I was going to enter into a season that was crippling for me. There was this one summer day, it was June 28th, and I took my kids with my mom to a friend's house in Temecula, and we went to go swimming. And there's only 4 kids total, my 3 and their friend, and the kids were so excited to go, so excited to swim. I mean, kids love, my kids are water babies, like I've always been. And they're all having a good time, all doing great, and my daughter, Charlize, and my son, Sawyer, needed to go to the bathroom. So I'm like, oh, okay, I mean, you know, the bathroom thing, you gotta take off everything, do the whole thing. So we get them out of the pool, and I take them to the bathroom. My mom is in the pool with Jax and Aria, the other little girl, with our family friend Natalie, and they're in the pool, they're having a good time. I take Jax and Sawyer and Charlize to the bathroom. We come back, I help Charlize get her bathing suit on, and I say to her, don't get in the water until I get your floaties back on. And then she trickles off. And little did I know that would be the last thing I said to her until my life completely changed. And before I know it, my mom and our friend is screaming, she's in the water, she's in the water. And I like look up and I can't even see her, like she's submerged under the water. And I run over there and I pull her out of the water and her whole face is blue. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I don't even know CPR. How do I not know CPR? I'm a mom. How do I not know CPR? I should know CPR. I don't know what to do. And our friend is telling me what to do. Pick her up, turn her up, like hit her back, like just telling me what to do in that moment. I feel like I know everything happened so fast, but it was like such a, it felt so slow, you know, like everything was so slow. And she eventually, like, she spit up tons and tons of water, spit up everything she ate. She had strawberries, and she spit up all the strawberries, and her color eventually came back, and it was awful. And then I had to call my husband and tell him what happened, which honestly, like, sucks. Like, why does it happen? Like, I'm like, why do I have this? I have to call him to tell him, you know what I mean? Like, he never has the moments where the kids break their arms or anything, and she almost died, and I'm gonna go tell him this. And he was with my in-laws, so that made it a million times worse, you know, like, so I had to call him and tell him, and we decided that we should take her to the ER just to be sure, because in just becoming a mother, like, I've read stories about secondary drowning, dry drowning, where people can die after they, like, similar to Charlize, where they spit up all the water, but there's still water in their lungs, and it builds up in their lungs, and then they end up drowning that way hours later. And so I'm like, okay, we should take her to the ER. So we drive home, drop the boys off, or leave the boys with my parents. My husband and I take Charlize to the hospital, and they're doing x-rays, she's getting blood work, all these things. And sure enough, the x-rays come back and she has pulmonary edema, which is water in her lungs. And she needed to be admitted right away. She was taken by ambulance to Rady's Children's Hospital. I mean, it felt like a slow motion film, like, just like, how did this happen? Like, you're just, you know, you think like this will never happen to you. Like, but it did. It happened to me. I remember reading those stories about those moms whose kids have drowned, almost drowned. I'm like, how did you do that? Like, how could you have not like watched your kid, you know? And then that was me. And then it was me, you know? And my mom and friend were in the pool, like, and she still went under, you know? And it just shows that things can happen to any of us. And we can all be in those situations that we think won't happen to us, but they can. And it's only by God's grace that Charlize is okay and that she's here and alive and well. But that experience brought on a lot of guilt. I struggled a lot with shame, and I felt like a horrible mom, that I could allow this to happen, that it happened, that I didn't save her. But you know what's amazing? Charlize talks about this. She to this day talks about this. And there was a time when she said to me, like, I went under the water, Mom, and I didn't see you, but you know what? You saved me. You saved me. She said, you saved me. And I had never, like, my mind never put it that way. I never put it as like, you saved me. I always like, you know, I let you drown. I let you fall under the water. I wasn't being saved. I was using the water floaties to like protect you. And those words from her, like, again, it's like we all have those moments in our lives that you don't forget. That was a moment for me that I didn't forget. Because of this experience, I started having extreme panic attacks, like not being able to breathe, hyperventilating panic attacks. And there was one day when Charlize was giving her baby doll a bath, and she like put the baby underwater, and I literally, I couldn't breathe. I had to call my husband to come home from work. I could not breathe. I could not function. It was just, I mean, it just felt like I could feel myself spiraling into this place again of anxiety and depression and inability to like just actually be there for my kids, and it felt lonely, and I was so ashamed, like just so ashamed of this happening. And I knew, again, here I was again in this place. I had a choice to make. Like, am I going to stay here or am I going to get help? You know, I was more afraid to get in the water than Charlize was. She was already back in the pool not even a week after her accident, and I couldn't even get in. Like, and when I did, I mean, I would have panic attacks in the water. Like, there was times where I had to leave the pool, leave my family from the pool because I couldn't do it, you know? And it's amazing. Like, it's amazing seeing my 3-year-old who was, I'm fine, I'm going in, like, see you, Mom, and then me, like, not being able to function, you know? And there was so much to learn from my daughter, you know, in her experience and how she was handling it. And I started therapy because I needed it. And I went back on medication because my anxiety, I had to take, I was on, I forget what I was on. It was helping with my panic because I would need something to calm me like instantly because I was so overwhelmed. But this season taught me a lot about coping and how to actually cope with my anxiety and learn techniques to help me in like severe panic. And I started practicing the grounding technique, which is like it's basically your five senses. People do them all differently. It's like smell, taste, hear, touch, and see. So like I could tell when I would start to get anxious, so immediately I would touch something. And then what am I touching? What am I feeling? Because if I didn't stop and ask myself those questions, I would easily fall into panic. And so I was not great at it at the beginning at all. I was not great at it. It took a lot of work for me to get to that point of like actually being able to cope with some of those things. And it's amazing what a difference breathing can make in any time you're feeling nervous or anxious, like just taking a few deep breaths. Like, so I like, deep breaths. I would play worship music all the time because I knew that if I like had that at least in the background, like that could help me, you know what I mean? Like it could help me with my anger, with getting angry at my kids, because the thing for me, you know, I think anxiety manifests differently for all of us, and for me, I would get angry. Like I'd get angry at my kids, I would yell, and I'm like, the worship music would help me in some capacity to just like calm and remember Jesus is with me and I'm gonna be okay. He's gonna guide me. And I mean, sometimes I'd have to literally stop and pray and just like go into my room, shut the door, and they banging on the door, and I'm like, I can't. I'm just like gotta center myself with the Lord. Sometimes I would just go in the garage and just yell curse words because I just like had to get it out. Like I just was like, I just can't, you know. But that season brought me to my knees, and once again, like God was showing me like the power of vulnerability and the beauty in just being raw and honest with your feelings and emotions, and to seeing how capable He is of pulling you out of really hard seasons. It's not easy, but He does it, you know. And so yeah, fast forward, my kids grew and grew, and we still had hard times because they're freaking 4-year-olds running around and they're crazy, and my boys are boys, like just wild boys, and they were in preschool. I get calls, Michelle, I get calls all the time, like, this happened today, and I'm like, oh my God, like, when does it stop? Like, just these boys. And then COVID happened, which I'm sure every single one of us probably felt some capacity of anxiety because we were all home with our children every second of the day. There was not even like my parents wouldn't even come to watch the kids. Like, I just was like, please, you know? And there was no just breathing time for yourself, you know? And you go through seasons where you like see, you learn to be intentional, right? Like, I feel like you're so good at like just being intentional with like self-care, doing things for you. It's hard to do sometimes. And I feel like going through the last, like, through COVID and stuff, I like really had to, it was harder to do, but I had to find places where I could, you know, do things for myself. And even if it meant just like walking around Target, like by myself with like a coffee and buying things, like that just made me feel better. And I'm like, I got a new dress today, Target. I mean, like there are things, you know. And when it was January or February, I guess, February of 2020, I found out I was pregnant, all on my own. And I mean, you guys, it was quite shocking, to say the least. Like, I was just like, it was very hard. It was a very, very hard, it was hard for me. It's amazing, beyond two polar ends of the, of like pregnancy, like finding out I was pregnant with the triplets, there was just like extreme joy. I was so happy. Finding out I was pregnant with Cambria, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I wept and wept and wept. And then I felt guilty for, you know, all those great emotions that come in, and you're just like, oh, you know. And you know, God just does things in you. Like, so my pregnancy with her was awesome. And it was during COVID, so that part was kind of not awesome, but like everything else was awesome. And I started to experience some anxiety like coming in, and I was like worried about experiencing postpartum depression again. Like, I need to have things in place. I need to do things to prepare me for this. One of my biggest struggles that I had leading up to her delivery was that I was going to die when I had her. I was afraid that I was going to lose my life and my family wouldn't have me, and my kids would grow up without a mom. And the reason I had that fear was because I almost died when I delivered the triplets. I lost a lot of blood. I needed blood transfusions, a vaginal pack. It was like scary, and I didn't realize until years into my therapy, like the trauma that had on me. And I didn't realize that there was still little like seeds from that like inside me until I was pregnant with Cambria, and terrified to deliver her. And it wasn't until like 2 weeks before her arrival where I finally got this peace that just like laid over me. And I knew, like, because of all these past 5 years at the time, like I knew what I needed to do. I knew I needed to tell my husband, I'm afraid I'm gonna die. I knew I needed to tell like people in my life that like could support me and help me. I knew I needed to be in my word. I knew I needed to surround me with like people who were going to just encourage me that it was all gonna be okay. And I did things that I just had to do that would bring comfort to me, like write letters to my kids in case I did die. So I did that. I was like, I have to leave them something just in case, you know? And I'm gonna show you this picture. My sister-in-law, Ryan's sister, my husband, sent this to me And it was the most comforting thing. This was such a big part of my healing when I was preparing for Cambria's delivery. And if you see, there's Jesus behind the operator, and so I just, or the surgeon, and so I just was like, you know what, like, I have to surrender this. Like, God is going to be with me. It's going to be okay. And that was like, that's what I mean by like, there are people in your life who like love you and support you and want to be with you in your lowest of lows. And Ryan's sister, she's one of those people for me, and she has been there for me in my lowest of lows. And she saw this and she sent it to me, and it was like such a big part of my healing in preparing for Cambria's arrival. And little did I know, Cambria was going to be the most redeeming experience from her birth to breastfeeding to her life. Everything about her has been a redeeming experience for me as a mom. She, you know, as I mentioned, I was afraid I was going to experience postpartum depression, so I had things into place. Told Ryan, if I start to do this, like, if you see me change, like, that means I need to get help. That means I need to see a doctor. That means I need to be in therapy. Like, there are sometimes when we are in these anxious, depressed moments where it's hard for us to recognize, like, the help that we need, you know what I mean? We don't always see the downfall, you know? And so I knew I had to tell him, like, if you see this, you have to jump on it. You can't just like let me spiral, you know? Like, I need your support. And about something about voicing your needs is so important. It's empowering, and it holds you accountable to know that someone else is going to help you, you know? So Cambria came. I had the most incredible birth with her. I had a VBAC. It was remarkable. I could not believe it. I obviously didn't die, which was like, I mean, it was just, I felt like it was so surreal. I had a terrible breastfeeding experience with the triplets. It was absolutely horrific. Cambria has been fantastic. I mean, it's just amazing how different each baby is and how polar opposite the experiences are, and how something like breastfeeding can cripple you, you know? It's just, and there are so many things in motherhood that, like, little things that can pick us apart, you know? And I am so thankful that I did not experience postpartum depression, but I knew that if I did, I would get the help that I need, and I would seek and be intentional about not staying in that place, because it's not a great place to be, you know? It's not healthy, and it's not fulfilling for anyone. Oh, I wanted to talk about this too. This is, I saw it down here and I didn't talk about it on the, rewind. Okay, so this is a great tool that worked for me. It's called the Calm Box. And when I was going through that season after Charlize is near drowning, I had read about a Calm Box, and basically in that box had a picture of my family. It had some Bible verses. It had lotion, because I knew that if I went to my Calm Box and I put on lotion, it forces you to stop and do something. You know, it forces you to stop and do something. I had affirmations. You are a great mom. Take a deep breath. Like, you know, like things to like help me just like calm in that moment. And the cool thing about the Calm Box is that I used it for my kids, you know, like, because, so it's interesting. I was talking to my sister about compassion the other day, and she's like, sometimes I just have a really hard time being compassionate for my kids, you know, when they hurt themselves. And I'm like, probably because mom and dad were never really compassionate towards us when we, like, you know what I mean? So you see, like, what you learn, you don't know what you haven't learned, you know what I mean? And so sometimes things take a little extra work. So with my own kids, in even just my, in my spurts of anxiety here and there and depression, I would see my kids, like, yelling, angry, so out of control, couldn't handle their own emotions, where I was like, maybe these things will work for them, you know, maybe we'll try this for them. So we started doing like a calm corner. So like one of my boys, he would have the hardest time with his emotions. He was all over the place, yell, scream. But the second he would get there, he learned to just go to his calm corner underneath his bed. He had a calm box for himself that had like some games and like, you know, little things that would, squishy things that help calm them down. Have a bath. I mean, a bath calms me down, so I guess it makes sense that it calms them down too. But it's like, I was seeing how I wasn't teaching my kids anything when I was just sitting there in that anxiousness, like thinking that I'm handling it, I'm yelling, I'm exhausted. and they're little people. They don't get it. They learn from us. They see every little move. They learn so much from us, you know. And there are so many teachable moments with our kids. There's so many teachable moments with our kids that we can take as an opportunity to teach them, even when we are not our best, you know. And telling our kids that is, I think, such a great. It's an opportunity for them to see that it's okay to fail. It's okay to have hard days. It's okay to cry, you know. And so I feel like I'm by no means perfect, but I feel like we try really hard to like enforce those things like in our home with my kids. Let's see here. Where are we going? Okay, so I have a little 10:30. Is that what you needed, right? Okay, so I have one last thing I wanted to share. So this season that I went through in the last like year and a half was a season where the Lord taught me the most to surrender my anxiousness to Him, in my worries and my fears, and probably my isolation, because I felt like no one could understand my heart. My husband and I did IVF. So when we did IVF, we got 14 embryos. And when we found out we had that many embryos, we decided one day we will walk through embryo adoption. That means that we would adopt some of those embryos to other families, and they would raise their children, which were our genetic children, but going into other families. And the years went by, right? Like my kids were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when the triplets were around 4, I'd gone to a conference and I met someone there, and we just started talking, sharing our stories, and we got on the topic of embryo adoption. And she was telling me about her daughter who was an adopted embryo, and I had never met anyone who who even knew what it was. Like I was just like blown away, and it felt like such, you know, those God moments. That was like a God moment. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, I think we're going to adopt embryos to them someday. Like I just know it, I feel it. 2 years go by, and I get a text. It's January of 2020, and she says, hey Des, like, are you still thinking about adopting out your embryos? And I knew, like God wants us to do this now. At the time, my husband and I were talking about going back for another IVF, but because she had reached out to us, I was like, no, I can't be pregnant and walk through embryo adoption at the same time. That sounds too hard. That would be very difficult. There are too many emotions, too many things that are come along in that. No thanks. So we decided, let's just wait until, I don't know, a couple years, and then we'll try for a transfer, and let's just walk through this season with them first. We knew God was leading us to do this now. And so we start signing paperwork, do the contract, the whole thing. Well, after we signed the paperwork, about 6 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with Cambria, right? So God has a fun sense of humor, you know? And so I was like, okay, all right, I guess we'll just, yeah, you know? So even when I say there was a lot of heavy emotions I was working with, I was terrified to be pregnant and walk through embryo adoption. And I was afraid that I wasn't gonna be able to handle the grief and the emotions that came with that. But God is so good. Like He's so, so good when we can just surrender things to Him. Fears, unknownness, like things that we don't know. I'm afraid of how I'm gonna feel like. And there was a lot of different emotions that came with that journey. Things that I know were like, that are like true emotions, but unreal. Like you can't like sit there. You know, when you sit there, that's when you spiral. And I felt like what kind of mom gives up her babies, you know? And but I knew that was what we wanted. We have always desired to give every single one of these babies a chance at life. That's where our mindset was. I was like, I know this is God too, because I met her 2 years ago. I knew that this was where He was leading us, and I knew it would be a painful season, but it has been one of the most incredible gifts I've ever experienced and been a part of in my entire life. And we have we have an open relationship with our recipients, and they have twins, a boy and a girl, Goldie and Jasper, right? It's like just something that happens, guys. I don't know. And it's a God thing. Like it's literally something that I can only say is from the Lord. My husband and I remember when they were born, one of my biggest fears was like what am I gonna feel when I see them? I'm afraid of what I'm gonna feel. They're gonna look like us. They're gonna look like my kids. I'm afraid of the feelings that are gonna happen. And our recipients, they're so loving and gracious and kind and thoughtful in things that we could also feel on this journey. I mean, it's been just remarkable. But I remember talking to her on the phone that night after she delivered her babies, and you could feel like the joy. Talking on the phone, I could feel the atmosphere, the joy in the room, and I just there was so much peace in that. And my husband and I, she said, I'm gonna send you the pictures. Are you sure you're ready for that? And I knew I wasn't ready. You're not ready. I'm terrified, but I wanted to. I wanted to see them. And my husband and I, we prayed right before we got the pictures, and we saw them, and it was hard. It was super hard. I could see my babies, I could see my boys and Charlize, and even my daughter Cambria. She was just a few months old at the time. And they said, well, when do you want to come meet them? And I remember feeling this you could feel my panic. I was hyperventilating, I don't know. And let's just do it, right? Let's just do it. And so Ryan and I just kept giving this to God. Lord, help us. Lord, help us. And we met them, and I don't know how else to describe it, except that there was just something supernatural that happened that day, because there was healing that took place in our hearts. And we have such a special relationship with them. God has been able to transform our minds to be able to do this, And so it's been such a gift, and He has taught me in that journey the beauty of surrender and being vulnerable with some of the hardest things I've had to that I've felt in that, about who I am as a person. What will people think about me, that I'm doing this? What are they going to think about their kids, my kids, all these things? And I just kept going back to the only one I need approval from is God. And I know that He is pleased. And so in the last 6 years, there has been so many seasons where God has taught me so much about how to handle my anxiety and my depression and my fears and my worries, and He's pulled me out of seasons, and each season He's taught me something new and something great, and I feel like it has really helped me become who I am in being capable. And sometimes I'm not capable. Sometimes I'm drowning in it. But being able to say, hey, I'm drowning today, help me. Help me. Somebody come alongside me and help me is there's so much beauty in expressing that to the people who are in your life, who want to be there for you. Yeah, so that's it. I don't know how to end it, but